All right, what is going on, everyone, and welcome back to Mets Weekly. We are live at this very moment on YouTube and on X for pregame coverage of the Mets versus Dodgers Game 3 of the National League Championship Series. Now, before the Mets return home in front of a very, very loud Queens crowd, we've got tons to discuss going into this game, of course. But before we do that, I want to remind everyone to hit the subscribe button to the Mets Weekly YouTube channel for live recordings of the Mets Weekly podcast following every Mets postseason game. For those of you watching live or on playback, you want to join the conversation in the future, make sure to turn on post notifications to know when we go live, as of course we're going live after tonight's game for episode number 97. I think that's the one. So make sure to stay tuned for that. For those of you in the live chat right now, want to let you know we love reading your comments, your questions, your concerns, all that great stuff regarding the team. If you feel like you're being ignored, you're not being ignored. You're just being starred throughout the show. So we'll try to pull up as many as we can to keep the flow of the conversation going. Make sure to follow Mets Weekly on X and on TikTok. TikTok. Where we just wrapped up Frank's post-game thoughts after every Mets regular season game. It was titled The Mets Frankly Post-Game. We'll be sure to have some content over there in the offseason. But for now, as for our audio listeners, make sure to follow us on any of your favorite listening platforms to not miss the audio version of new podcast episodes that go up at 9 a.m. the following day that these are recorded live. But without further ado, let's get into our pre-game show. And of course, we had ourselves a off day after a pretty stressful, tedious win, let's just say, in game 2, where the Mets spent over 3 hours trying to piece it all together, but they were able to even up the series. It's a brand new series. It is best of 5 now, and now the environment has shifted from the sun and fun of LA to the city that never sleeps for game 3, for game 4, and for game 5. So the Mets, by math, could possibly close this thing out at home. But again, this is a really good Dodgers team, and I'm pretty sure that has been identified throughout these first 2 games very clearly to all of us. Frank, how do you feel going into Citi Field? I mean, with all the momentum on our backs now and our crowd behind us.
I feel good. I definitely feel like this is where you want to be. I think, like I said, getting that split was huge. Like you said, 3 opportunities at home is great consecutively. I feel like it kind of favors the road team in a way because, like you said, I mean, if you come out with that split, you don't have to go back there. I feel like that's a big advantage. Whereas vice versa, like no matter what for the other team, like you have to win some games on the other field. So it definitely is. I think it definitely favors the Mets in this kind of scenario. So that's going to be nice to be home for a few days in a row. You have the home crowd behind us. It's going to be loud. It's going to be passionate. And I'll tell you what, with the prices they are charging for these tickets, you better be passionate because it ain't cheap. So definitely, you're either rich or passionate, maybe a little bit of both. So it's going to be crazy. It's going to be exciting, especially for the Mets to be back here in the NLCS. Like that's wonderful, and you have a great opportunity here. We'll get into it. We'll break it down, but feel pretty good. I mean, this is a winnable game for the Mets, and I think that with the I mean, Quintana's been pretty good so far, but I think with the Yamamoto tomorrow, he could go either way. So I feel like we know Buehler's been struggling. Take advantage of that. You really need to win today's game, in my opinion, because the way I look at it is that like Yamamoto could go either way in game 4, and then game 5 with Senga. I mean, it could be a repeat of game 1. So I feel like you can't risk that. So I feel like today is the one. Like you take this one, then maybe you could steal one the next 2, and you're pretty much golden to come there because you really don't need much else to finish it off. So I think today is not one of those really big ones. But like this is your most winnable game, in my opinion. So you definitely want to take advantage of that.
Yeah, obviously they can hopefully carry it into after the off day of what can happen in this series. Again, this is a tough opponent no matter where you play, so it's good to jump ahead in that regard, especially with how the Mets have kind of played this thing out, setting up, of course, with Kodai Senga in game 1, which was kind of an unfortunate situation. But in game two, having Shamanaya basically try to tie up that series for you, he did get the job done. He kept us in the game. And then you have Luis Severino, who has not been amazing so far in this postseason, but again, he has done the job keeping us in the game. And that's the main reason as to why I feel like the matchup is a lot better than just, oh, well, Mets versus Dodgers. I feel like the current situation that you're in, the Mets have a huge, and I mean a huge chance to strike today. And we will get into all the details as to why. But as for, coming in here, coming home with that momentum of, flushing game one away, not laying down whatsoever, which is what this team has continued to do. Then they get the off day. I do think that, when you do take one game in a row, I do agree that in this 7-game series, you don't have to go back there, technically, mathematically. I personally think we're going to eventually go back to LA, but one game at a time, of course. But when it comes to game 3, they could possibly not go back there, and it makes sense why, they do things like that. I feel like it should be more of a geographical type of sense for games 5 to game 7, where usually it used to be game 5, is at the higher seed, game 6 is at the lower seed, and game 7 is at the higher seed. So they keep flopping with that. But when it comes to New York and LA, it makes sense to have 3 games in a row here. And then, of course, like the Dodgers get the first licks, of course, of the first 2 games. That's how I feel. Yeah.
Unless you want to perhaps do more off days to, kind of accommodate for the travel that goes on, you could do it. The NBA had a thing where they had the 2-3-2, and I remember the Miami Heat, they split and then won the 3 in Miami, and then pretty much shortly after that they went to the different format of the 2-2-1-1-1. So I mean, we'll see. I mean, I'm sure some fan base may complain about it if it doesn't go their way. Kind of, we talked about the first round bye thing. It's like, some people like it, some people don't like it. They feel like you get rust. So everyone has complaints about everything. That's just kind of the way it goes. So we'll see. But I feel like what you said, like just geographically, like this just kind of makes the most sense. Just especially if you're also trying to like line it up with what's happening in another league. So it's like, let's say if in a different league you had 2 teams that are more closer together in the American League, they don't need those extra travel days. So you don't want like the American League to end way before National League, even though last year's American League got extra off day than the National League. So
they're also out of line here too. Yeah.
Yeah. So as long as they end close to the same date, that's really what it comes down to. But of course, if one is a sweep, which it could be in the American League, and this one goes to 7, which it could, then you could have a little bit of a layoff in between. But overall, like there's no perfect answer for something like this.
I personally think that good teams are able to overcome any of these types of things. And I'm not saying that the Braves weren't a good team at that current moment, but that's soft energy to me. It just is. I don't know if that's just the New Yorker in me where I'm just like, that's just so soft. Like, this is the reason why we lost is because we had all these off days. I'm sure it could play a factor in, but we've also seen the team with the bye move on to the NLCS or move on to the next round. The Yankees did it. The Guardians did it. I understand that there was, maybe a little bit lower of competition. You're facing like sub 90 win teams. And as compared to like a team like the Phillies that could really knock you out that way. The Dodgers were still able to beat a Padres team that's really, really good. In 5 games. They were behind in that series. They were able to overcome it. So, I mean, I think that, obviously change is always made because everybody needs to find a way to complain about something. But when it comes to that certain playoff format, the home field advantage, it does make sense to favor, it does make sense to favor the higher seed. I get it. I 100% get it. But when it's New York and LA, it makes a lot more sense to have it be 3 trips instead of 1, 2, like 5 different trips. I mean, like it makes a lot more sense to do something like that. Now, before I do get into all of the details here, there is something that has been bothering me the last time from when it was announced yesterday. The first pitches for this Game 3 to Game 5 at Citi Field. First, here's my first comment. I feel like at some point, we got to have Carlos Delgado come back here. I don't know why he's not here at any point. But for some reason, they're just that relationship has not been mended at all. It's great to see Cespedes, to be honest. Great to see him back. I'm glad they were able to track him down because he's usually like a moving target. Because
they couldn't find him when they needed him. Remember when he dipped in 2020? He just like literally left.
Yeah, that was when I was done. That was when I was finished. If you weren't done by the fact that he got attacked by a wild boar, that was just icing on the cake. But, definitely the craziest tenure with any team was Yoenis Cespedes. But again, he was a big deal to, the 2015 team and also the 2016 team, keeping it afloat when everybody got injured. When it comes to Matt Harvey, we already know the story with him. It's great to see him, getting it together now after, some of the stuff that has come out recently. But the last thing, today it is Darryl Strawberry throwing out the first pitch to Doc Gooden. Shouldn't it be Doc Gooden throwing the baseball off the mound? Because, he's I don't know, a pitcher. That makes a little more sense to me. And it was this year that both of their numbers were retired, both of them. Yeah. So it makes sense, but that doesn't obviously you can't have the catcher because, Carter's gone, but it was so weird. It's so in there, the sense are okay, Strawberry's throwing out to Gooden. Shouldn't it be the other way around because he's the pitcher? They had more of a theme relative when Keith Hernandez, he threw out the first pitch from first base, I'm pretty sure, when his number was retired. I know that they're not retiring the numbers now, but it just makes sense more that Doc Gooden throws it out, maybe. I don't know, maybe that's the way that they're doing it, but it seems like it's being reported as Strawberry to Gooden, which is so weird to me. I don't know. Again, this is a whole different topic, but before we get into all the specifics of this crazy game and this crazy series against a really good team, I mean, that's so weird to me. That's just so odd. You have Harvey, he's the pitcher, he's throwing it out, it seems like. Is Gooden just not able to throw a baseball anymore? I don't...
Well, that's the thing. I mean, if anyone's had health problems, it's Strawberry. I mean, he had really bad health things this year where there was legitimate concerns about how he was going to be. So I really don't know what the situation is. I mean, maybe it's a typo and Gooden does throw because, like I said, it makes a lot more sense. But I'm just glad that in this regime of Steve Cohen, they have acknowledged and really celebrated more the history of all the very good Mets who kind of got forgotten about or didn't get the proper treatment after departing the organization. So it has been just an overall welcome change, just in general with the culture around the organization.
I do think that it probably was right with it being Mets Dodgers. They probably should have done Ruben Tejada. Probably, it made sense, but again, these are Mets legends here. These are big parts to these teams.
Yeah, to me, all the guys you mentioned are much bigger legends than Ruben Tejada. I got to be honest, because to me, I was actually advocating at the time for Flores to start over Tejada anyway. I was tired of the no bat, especially in a league where you didn't have the DH yet. I was like, I don't need two automatic outs. So I Tejada was a good defender. Don't get me wrong, but I was like, that team 2015 needs some offense. Cespedes provided a lot. Grandy provided a lot, but with Wright struggling a little bit, Duda, we know the inconsistencies. Darno's all or nothing. I didn't mind just a little bit more offense of a player. So I was okay with Flores starting. Defensively, there was concerns, obviously, but I felt like they could have used some offense in that era of baseball.
I think of the thought of just an aging Wright, and then Murphy was so bad, and then Duda was not good at first base.
But Murphy got hot for the CS, and then wasn't the same.
So they were like, okay, well, we need to have some kind of defense up the middle here.
Yeah.
But again, that's a completely different topic. Of course, we're getting off course here. But let's actually get into this game. And when it comes here, we look at this pitching matchup. Of course, we're going up against Walker Buehler, who we'll do a full breakdown on. But, of course, on the other side, I want to talk about Luis Severino. Luis Severino definitely has he definitely have his work cut out for him. But I do think there are ways as to where he can go deep into this game and start rolling. Not particularly by the swing and miss, but more of just the contact management and, kind of just taking advantage of some of the splits from the left-handed hitters and the right-handed hitters. We talked about this every single time, and I'll continue to bring it up. And it seems to be working so far. You got to give Ohtani nothing to pull. You got to give Muncy nothing to pull. Freeman is a little bit different. He's more of just the high pitch. You just got to get him up with the high pitch, and hopefully he swings and misses at the high ladder. But there's some lefties in this lineup that can really do a lot of damage to right-handed pitchers if you make a mistake. And when it comes to even Teoscar Hernandez, who hits from the right side, he also does really well from the. I don't know if he has reverse splits because I think he's good from both
for
sides.
his career, he had been really good against lefties. I think this year was a little more even, but for his career, he had been really good against lefties.
They usually don't do platoons out there with the Dodgers. They usually have guys who can hit both.
Yeah, Teoscar's just that good that he hits both. So he's going to be there every day. I do find, while you're looking it up, I do find it interesting that for the Dodgers, they definitely went with a different configuration this time around. Obviously, I made my rant about catchers and stuff like that, but Will Smith did get dropped quite a bit in the order. I mean, he was batting fifth or so, and he's all the way down to 7 due to his struggles this postseason, not just against the Mets, but also in the Padres series. He hasn't been swinging a great bat. I did find it interesting. Max Muncy has been very productive this series. He had that bomb of a home run, so they move him to the top 4. And then for Gavin Lux in the 6 hole, I found that interesting because if you remember, Gavin Lux in his first start when the Mets had the right-hander on the mound, he was bunting. He was doing some sacrifice bunting. Yeah. So I don't see him doing that in the 6th spot with Teoscar in front of him and Will Smith behind him. I don't see him still doing that.
I think it's just to split up the righties.
But if anything, you could have used the hot bat in Tommy Edman to bat 6 because you could just do your thing.
Tommy Edman probably should be leading off, and they'd probably win.
He's been that good this series, so I did find that kind of fascinating. That Lux went up in that sense. I wasn't really expecting that because they sat him when Manaea pitched, so they don't feel that great about him. But I did, like we said, Edman's been swinging a good bat, so to put him 8, I thought was kind of weird. But Kike 9 makes sense. But the Dodgers, they did find themselves of okay. It hasn't been too great offensively the second game, so we want to switch it up a little bit as far as the order. As far as the Mets, they have not changed anything. If anything, they did a bad change, which we'll get to later, in my opinion. But as far as the actual number order, it's exactly the same as far as the positions.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens now after further review with Teoscar Hernandez. It seems like overall quality, it seems like he's better against lefties this year, but he has displayed a lot more power against righties. 22 of his 33.
Well, maybe more at bats, no, because of
definitely more,
more
but there's
pitchers.
Definitely a gap.
Yeah, I know for his career it was more extreme. He was really good against lefties. One of the reasons why I've always been a big advocate for him, and if things don't go well this postseason, I'm going to be a big advocate again. It's he's always a great fit. Always.
I'm going to be a big advocate for a switch hitter who
we know.
hits righties and lefties
we all agree
very well and just hits bombs against them. And I know that the rest of us are going to be too. But you know what? That's a different time. That's a different discussion, of course. M-Easy saying I would have pitched Quintana tonight on full rest so he could pitch Game 7. I would go to Manaea Game 7 if that happens. That's just my preference.
Well, Manaea's lined up for Game 6.
So, exactly. That's probably where I would pitch Quintana, and then I would probably pitch So it'd be Quintana or Severino. Game 3. Game 4 is
Quintana.
5
is Senga.
5 would be Senga.
6 Manaea. 7 Severino.
Okay, so Severino. So maybe Severino Game 6 if they need it, because that would be some rest, right? That would be 5 days of rest, I believe.
Game.
But again, we don't know if there's going to be a Game 7.
Yeah, and which is
But
kind of why like starting Mania earlier in the series works because like you have a chance to like
yeah,
end it in six, hopefully. So
yeah,
I'm not again. I think it's gonna work out all in all. We'll see. The game that I'm scared, like I said, is game five. But in fairness, it looks like the Dodgers still have to do another bullpen game as well. So
yeah,
I don't know if maybe like since Honeywell pitched so well, he'll get more of a burn than Knack or like other guys like that.
yeah,
But overall, it's like we both teams still have a game that it's like we don't know what's gonna happen. Like as far as like if Sanga goes deep or maybe Peterson gets to start, like Sanga can't go far. So both teams still basically have a bullpen game to do. So that's why I feel like you know what if you're gonna lose your bullpen game, don't waste your ace against their ace. Use your ace against their bullpen game so you make sure you win, like that kind of thing. Just like if you see a like easy win, like get it because at this point just trying to who gets to four. So it's like if you have a really good pitching advantage, take it there.
yeah. Daniel coming in, one of the Daniels of our loyal viewers. There's a lot of Daniels in
One
here.
of the trifecta.
Um, yeah, I think Steven's saying he was a waste of money. I think he was talking about Cespedes when we were talking about him.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it
But yeah,
didn't work
I
out.
think
I think based off it was one of
after
those
we
things
paid
where
him, there was
yeah,
definitely a lot of concern. Yeah,
after we paid him the
absolutely.
second time because the first
Yeah,
go around like it was fine, 2015 was good, 2016 was good, but
yeah.
then things obviously went downhill. But it was one of those
Things.
situations in a different ownership, thirsty for stars. He had just done so much that like you were kind of
Mm,
handcuffed there.
yeah, definitely. Yeah. Gabriel's saying
Yeah, I agree with
the
this.
offense needs
This
to
is a
give
great
Sevy a
take.
cushion for when he implodes in the middle innings.
Hmm.
Absolutely. One thing I will say, I do like putting out these guarantees, and I will put it out the guarantee um, for them winning if this does happen. Since we are talking a little bit about Severino before we get into Buehler for a second. I do think that given the circumstance, I do think that if Severino gives up the minimum of or what is it the maximum of 3 runs, they win this game. I do think that they will win this game if he keeps it a 3-run ball.
Yeah,
That's
I
kind of
feel
how I look at
yeah.
it from the other side. Yeah.
It's going to be
Um.
another of those things very similar to Mania, but I want to see Severino avoid the walks as much as possible because I
Yeah.
think here, knowing that you're in a different scenario where in his start, there's 3 games in a row that, and he's the first half of it. Whereas Mania, he pitched and you had an off day the next day. But in this case, it's like Severino goes and you have 2 more games after that. So you want to have your bullpen as rested as possible, especially with that game five coming up where you know you're going to need your bullpen. So
Yeah.
as far as like it's kind of one of things where you trade innings for runs in a certain sense, where like if he has to give up maybe like one solo shot to a Muncie or something like that in order to make sure he's not get putting a bunch of guys on base, having these really long innings. I feel like you might make that trade because we'll get to Buehler, but the Mets should have some runs on the board here. Like this should not
Yes.
be he has to pitch really carefully because there's little room for error. Like he should have a little bit of a lead where he cannot walk batters. That's the main thing. I need length here because when Quintana, there's volume issues. Even though he's been good as far as not allowing runs, there still are those volume concerns. And then, like I said, game five, we just have no idea. So this is the one opportunity to kind of rest your bullpen as much as possible for those next 2 days coming up because we saw what happened last game where all these guys had to do multiple innings as far as Maton inning a third, Stanek inning a third, Diaz inning a third. It's hard to do. You can't do that 3 days in a row. It's the effectiveness is just way too risky. You're bound for
Yeah.
blowups between Maton or Stanek. So they can't use that game plan every time around. So at least one of these games, they need to get some length from somebody.
Yeah. Obviously, you're most likely have Budo and Peterson unavailable too, when you think about it. So, or maybe
Yeah, and I
Budo
feel like
might
they're
be
saving
available.
Pearson for game five too,
They
because with the whole
probably are
Sanga thing,
saving
I feel like they're
Peterson for
just
game
saving
5.
Peterson.
Yeah.
And then with
Yeah.
Budo, it's one of those things where if I have a rested pen, I'm not going to him. Like I'm
Yeah.
going Stanek, I'm going Reed. Obviously, how did I forget? Oh my gosh, Reed Garrett. Like I'm going Reed, Stanek, Diaz,
Yeah.
and then if I need more, Maton. But right now, it's like those are the three: Garrett, Stanek, Diaz. Like ideally, Summer could go 6 at minimum, and then you could do
Yeah.
Reed, Stanek, Diaz, game over. Hopefully, but if you can go more, that's even better. But five,
Yeah.
five is dicey. Five could
Yeah.
really go either way. So for my
Even
key
in
is
the
like I
sense,
need
yeah.
6.
Yeah, 5 in the set, or like 5 or even less than 5. Like, here's the thing with long relief tonight, if we need it, it doesn't seem like they're even putting Tyler McGill in that equation. So
No, they
it
haven't. He
doesn't
still
seem like
hasn't
that's
warmed up
happening.
for anything. Like they went to
He
Danny
hasn't.
Young over
No,
him. So I don't
absolutely has
know.
not.
I
No.
really thought that maybe he could be like considering that both Senga and Peterson didn't pitch well game 5. Like as a backup plan, I'd consider it just to give a different look.
Mm.
But other than that, like I don't really know what his role is. I mean, and
The
it's tough
bottom part of the
because
order probably would be the best way to put him in this game.
yeah,
That
I
probably
mean,
is.
yeah, that's some. Yeah, if he can
Yeah.
go the 6 through 9, like there's an opportunity there. I feel, but it's tough because the other thing too is, I mean, there's so much, especially when we talk about innings, like the concerns of third time around the order, fourth time around the order, with just how great this top half
Yeah.
of the Dodgers is, especially like Severino struggles that sixth inning, third time around. It's tough. I mean, it is really tough against this particular team. You have to go with Tiny Betts Freeman a third time around. It's like, what else do you have in your arsenal to try to keep these guys off balance? Because those 3 guys in particular are just so good that they're all bound to crush something. If you, depending how many pitches they get, like in the other at bats, so it's tough to navigate. You know, there really is just no way around it.
Yeah, obviously it's star power at the top again. Like, these are stalwart players, and they've held them off fairly well. Let's just say so far. It hasn't been perfect, but in that second game they did a really good job. They pitched around him a little bit, but now as for the other side for the Mets lineup, like you said, it's pretty much the exact same, except for one move, which I know a lot of people are talking about. Who is not in the lineup, Jesse Winker, who has 2 homers against Walker Buehler. He's 4 for 15 against him. And they put in JD Martinez, who I don't think has faced Walker Buehler that many times in his career. But when it comes to JD Martinez, who has not played yet in this series, and then you have Winker, who did have that base running mistake in game 1, but so far he's been,
You know
swinging a
what? He
decent
got on
bat.
base,
Yeah.
which most of the guys in that game
Yes.
didn't even do. So
Yeah,
he's
exactly.
like one of the
So
guys
he
that
got
pulse.
on. He got on. He also had a pretty good game too, as well. We know Marte is going to be back there in the 5 spot after the game that he had. But when it comes to JD Martinez, he's coming cold off the bench here, and I know that, even though it's a vulnerable pitcher here in Walker Buehler that we will get into in a second. There also was a report about Jeff McNeil not being in the lineup, and with Jose Iglesias struggling the way that he has these recent few games, it seemed like the perfect time to put Jeff McNeil in the starting lineup. No, it's not, never is. But when it comes to Walker Buehler, who has struggled the way that he has, he's a right-handed hitter. It probably made sense to put Jeff McNeil in there, but I'd say that the reasoning behind this, Jose Iglesias in his career against Walker Buehler is 4 for 10. So I feel like that's the main reason as to why he's in there, and also Jeff McNeil sucks. Anyways, other guys that we can look out for in regards to this, it's pretty much the usual suspects. The top of that order, those top 2 guys, Ohtani against Luis Severino is 3 for 6 with a homer and a double. You have Mookie Betts, who is 10 for 32. Remember, he's faced him a lot when he was in Boston, with a home run and 4 doubles. Again, we know that Severino is a different pitcher now, and that was also the whole thing with Sean Manaea, where he was able to shake off a lot of the demons in the postseason, especially his career against the Dodgers. And as for the other side, Starling Marte, let's hope he can keep it going, because he is 2 for 6 against Walker Buehler. Then there also is another hitter in there that I will get into later as the key to this one. I think we all know who that is. A man who has 4 home runs against Walker Buehler in his career, and has destroyed him ever since he was a rookie, ever since he hit 53 home runs in his rookie year. Can you guess who it is? Anyways, as for Walker Buehler, I do want to get into him with a full-on breakdown, because it is a little bit a different of a Walker Buehler than we saw in his heyday, let's just say. We definitely played well against him early on in the season, But as for the overall breakdown for him, we know that he has a kitchen sink arsenal, mainly uses 5 pitches, but does have 7, 29% four seam, 21% cutter, 19% curveball, 16% sinker, 8% sweeper, 5% changeup, 1% slider, which he doesn't really use anymore because he has a cutter. The best graded pitch, of course, is his cutter that he utilizes to left-handed hitters. Sits 91 to 92, tops 94, over 2,400 RPMs, and 10 inches of vertical break. As for the grades, for those who like the scale of the Stuff Plus scale, 116 Stuff Plus, 100 Command Plus, 112 Pitching Plus. As for the rest of his arsenal, backspinning fastball that sits about 95 to 97 these days, touches 95 to 96 these days, and touches 97, with over 16 inches of induced vertical break. He has the heavy knuckle curve style curveball with RPMs in the 2,500s, a mid-90s two-seaming sinker, which can also be known as just pretty much a two-seam fastball with over 14 inches of glove side run. He has a power spin sweeper, and he has, of course, that gyro action changeup as well. Now, one thing that we do know, in May, he did return from Tommy John surgery. I don't know if it was his second Tommy John surgery or it was his first Tommy John surgery, but it was Tommy John surgery that he did come back for. He's always had, like that high arm slot with the high deception with the secondary pitches. But he has really struggled to get swings and misses all season. All 7 pitches, no matter what, even though you want to call it 5 pitches, have registered a whiff rate under 25% this year. The main thing has been his main pitch being his fastball, where hitters have registered a 446 expected weighted runs on base average and a 50.7% hard hit rate against his fastball, which has been getting absolutely crushed. But even though he has suppressed the hard contact somewhat, the amount of contact against left-handed hitters has destroyed Walker Buehler this year. Lefties are slashing 296, 362, 528 with a 339 batting average on balls in play this season against Walker Buehler. And although he used to be a lot better before Tommy John surgery, Buehler has never really had much luck against the Mets in 5 career starts. 27 innings pitched, 24 hits, 15 earned runs, 8 walks, 28 strikeouts, which balances out to an even 5 earned run average in his career against the New York Mets. So we're hoping that they can definitely put the hurt down on somebody like Walker Buehler, who has definitely struggled a lot. This is an easy opportunity for them to take a lead in this series for the first time. And again, like we said, with the run support for Severino to go the distance, this basically being Walker Buehler struggling as much as he has this year. Like I said, 3-run ball from Luis Severino, you're in good shape to win this game. What do you think about Walker Buehler from this one?
So Walker Buehler is definitely an interesting story because, he was someone that did have some hype when he first debuted, despite, some luck that was involved. The injuries have really just changed the trajectory of his career. And it was a struggle for him this season. As you see on the graphic, the main graphic, he only threw 75 innings this year. And in those 75 innings, looking at ERA above 5. So it was not a good season for him. First half was a little worse. Second half wasn't great. He's been worse on the road this year, and this is a road start for him. And then, what I'm looking at is his most recent start. So he had 1 start in the Padres series, in the division series, 7 hits, 6 runs, 1 walk, 0 strikeouts. So he got beat up pretty bad. Like you said, was not able to avoid contact. The San Diego Padres are obviously much more left-handed heavy than the Mets are. So the Padres obviously match up better, but it's more so just the fact that he couldn't get a single strikeout. Like that is real. That's hard to do in today's game. It's a very heavy strikeout brand of baseball that's played. So he was just getting beat up. So he's not in the greatest spot right now. But as far as the way he matches up with the Mets, luckily his slider is only 1% usage because we know the Mets and their right-handed heavy lineup, which they went extra right-handed heavy today against the guy who throws against lefties, whatever. So he does have the slider that he's really going to utilize, but that curveball that you mentioned, I do have some Jack Flaherty like concerns of if he gets ahead, he could use that as a put away pitch against some of these right handed hitters. Even though I think overall the Mets have done a good job of laying off a lot of them, like particularly Vientos, Marte, Alonso, like they have done a good job of avoiding those. But I feel like it is something that I could see JD Martinez fishing at, and you
Yeah.
give JD
Hmm.
Martinez the start. I don't agree with it.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I
Yeah.
understand Mendoza's line of thinking. Like, you don't want anyone to get too rusty. You want to give JD a shot for his experience and postseason success, things like that. I get it. But I feel like when you have another option who's also been playing pretty well, like Winker got on base 3 times last game. I feel like that was a much better opportunity to just use Winker. He's been fine. As far as Iglesias McNeil, I'll give Iglesias one more. You know what I mean? Like if he has a worse game, like if there's double plays, struggling with runners on base, I'll give McNeil a start. For now, I do understand the also thought process of like we've gotten really, really far with what we have. We're not going to change it. If it's not broke, don't
Yeah.
fix it. I totally get that mentality. I agree with that. So I'll give Iglesias one more, even though, again, in this particular matchup, you want as many left handed bats. You could, but I think overall, that part I don't agree with. I just think Winker was the overall better matchup. And again, I feel like a guy that struggles against lefties, why would you, even though the Mets are very right handed dominant to begin with, why would you go one step further, making even more right handed when you actually had some lefty bats to use? I don't quite understand that, but I think overall, there still is a very good opportunity here, though. Like he is going to give you pitches to hit him. I mean, he's not someone that's going to like totally walk the ballpark. So you know what? If you have some pitches that you like, go for it. I mean, I would love to see Vientos continue his wonderful postseason. Obviously, the guy we're going to get to later, his great career numbers against Buehler. It'd be great for him to hit another. He's been pretty good this postseason. The homers, now be a good time to hit another. Obviously, JD Martinez, if he wants to give me a home run, I'd definitely take it. Lindor's been swinging a good bat, so he's always a threat to go long. And then, obviously the catcher at the bottom, he wants to hit his first, go for it. And then, like a lot of these guys, like they have very good opportunities to really get some big swings. And I feel like that's what's going to take. Like we said, if we could give Severino some cushions that he could work deep into the game, it's one of those things where, like, yes, you win game 3, but in the fashion that you do it, it can really help you for game 4 and 5 if you have those other arms available. So this is a really good opportunity for the Mets, and they really got to capitalize. So I want to see them be aggressive early, not overall aggressive, not swinging at everything, because then he'll just get you with the curveball and all the other arsenal that he has. But you see pitches early, crush them.
Yeah. When it comes to like the lefty righty, and even though lefties are
He
teeing
hasn't
off
really
all
been good
together,
against either in
he hasn't been
fairness.
good against
Yeah,
righties
like
either. Like
it's just like,
it's like it's a
yeah,
small gap. Let's just
yeah.
say that. But when it comes to like that curveball that Walker Bueller throws, he's been all over the place with that. Let's just say that. So he has not had good command of it at all year. He has
But
gotten his
it,
swing
it
and
ends
misses at
up
it. It's
it
always
ends
been the
up
swing
in
and
that
misses.
outside lower quadrant that the right-handers struggle with. For, like on average, that's where his curveball ends up.
It
So that's
seems
kind of where
like
I get worried.
it seems like it's more down than it
But
seems like
which
it's more
again, it
down than
could they could be
diagonal.
chasing in the dirt like they did with Flaherty.
Yeah,
So
I get it.
that's kind of like it's not even something you could hit. So why are you even fishing at it?
Yeah, with Flaherty, it's a little bit more of late tumble. I'd say that this is more like Mitch Keller, more like
Mm. Which Mitch
uh
Keller, the Mets did
oh and
struggle against him this year,
yeah,
big time.
Aaron
So
Nola. Aaron Nola's another guy you could
and
put
they
in
did
there.
swing at his curveball too, even though they had the good game. They had those
Yeah.
runners on base, and it took a lot of tries to break through.
Yeah, those are basically the comparisons I would make in consideration to that. Let's just say that. But I think that when you go into a game like this, you can't just get too comfortable. Obviously, you know, even though Walker Buehler has struggled the way that he has, I do want to see them wake up the way that they did against their bullpen game, and hopefully that can translate because we did see them face, an actual starting pitcher in the game one. Did not go well with Jack Flaherty, so I do want to see them face an actual starter this time, even though Walker Buehler is probably the easiest target this year. Because like you're probably not going to get many against a guy like Yamamoto, who
He might be
even
the
though the Mets have
worst
hit
starter we
well
faced
and
yet
he's
this
had his
postseason.
blowups. Who?
He might be the worst
Who?
starter we faced yet this postseason. He's worse than all the Phillies guys, for sure.
Buehler.
Yeah.
Buehler. Yeah,
I mean, you faced
possibly.
Peralta, like, for the most
Yeah.
part, the
Taiwan
Mets have,
Walker didn't start in that series.
no. It was Suarez, Sanchez, Nola, Wheeler. Like, this is probably the worst guy you faced.
Yeah, definitely. I'd say that. But yeah, this is definitely a opportunity for them to wake up the offense a little bit and maybe show a little bit of consistency in regards to that, because there is one thing that Walker Buehler has really struggled to do this year, that being just overall missing bats. Like, there is just, everyone is making contact with his pitches now. And he just can't get swings and misses. Like you said, the last time that he pitched, what was it, against San Diego? 0 strikeouts. I'm sure he had like a few whiffs or whatever, but he can't get any swings and misses right now. So, there's a lot of opportunities to make contact against a guy like Walker Buehler. And hope that they can obviously do that. They're going to have to attack early, because I do have another key as for that that I do want to bring up in a second. But in regards to the other pieces that we can put in here as well, we know that Pete Alonso has the big career against him. I don't know if Nimmo has done well against Buehler. I'm not sure, but this is obviously an opportunity for the lefties in here, who I think it's just Lindor and Nimmo, I believe, to do some damage against somebody like Walker Buehler, who has really been leaving pitches in their wheelhouse, even though righties he has not been able to pitch to at all. Nimmo is 2 for 10 against him. He has a triple, so that probably won't end up happening because of his foot. But again, I think that there was also a thought as to where Winker probably could have played left field. They could have rested Nimmo and expanded the bench.
Honestly, with plantar
Martinez at
fasciitis,
DH.
one day is going to do nothing, to be honest. It's not going to help at all.
I'm just saying
it'll help like a
expanding the
little
bench.
bit. No, you can expand
I'm
the
saying
bench, but
expanding the
I'm
bench
just saying,
later in the
like,
game,
if they think sitting Nimmo one day is going to be like, oh, Nimmo will be like much better the rest of the series, it's not. Like, just let him play.
Oh, no.
It's a pain tolerance injury. It's a pain tolerance.
I'm not talking about it injury-wise, but just the thought of them saying that we're going to put Martinez in the lineup. Like yesterday, they said it could be possible he makes his debut in the series. But Winker also has had the really good career, so it made sense, maybe you just put him in left field. You also have Nimmo, who you could just give like a breather to, and then he could come in late into the game to expand the bench in these high leverage situations if you need him.
Well, I
we
wonder,
know that he's done really well in those.
Yeah, I wonder, since Winker is on the bench, if they consider, like, if Taylor has a couple guys on, I mean, you could go to Winker there to pinch hit and then have Bader take over, which they haven't done yet. So I don't think they're going to do it now. But maybe it's an opportunity. Maybe, like, let's say first at bat he's fishing at curveballs or whatever. Then maybe second time when it's been on, you'd consider it. Or McNeil, and then, or even like the vice versa. Like, let's say Iglesias comes up with men on, you could go Winker there and then have McNeil come in. I mean, there's like, it gives you options. Like, you have Winker at your disposal for certain matchups, but again, I'm not sure if they're going to do that.
Yeah, and again, I mean, this is a struggling Walker Buehler that they're facing, and we know that we were talking about him struggling so much that he most likely will end up dominating us tonight. But in terms of how he is gone for him all season, pretty much any formula seems to work right now as to where he just can't miss bats whatsoever. And like that's that certain swing and miss stuff. We know the Mets are a little bit more power driven than they were last year or the year before. So now that you get pitches that you can make good contact with, and hopefully you do get some run support for somebody like Luis Severino, who, again, like I said, given this matchup of Walker Buehler, who struggled, I don't think needs to be very perfect tonight. Like, he just needs to be a quality starting pitcher. Give us a quality start. That's it. 3 earned runs, 6 innings. That's it. Like, nothing. Just keep us in the game, and we're going to win this game. I personally believe that. Like I said, he gives up 3 runs or less. we win this game, hands down. Given the history, let's just say that, because you never know. Maybe Walker Buehler, we all know when you get on the Citi Field mound, it's a pitcher's ballpark. So Walker Buehler, maybe he channels the old 101 he was throwing at one point. You never know. Anything can happen in Queens, but it seems like this team has a lot of energy. But anyways, when it comes to some keys to the game, which I do want to pop up, Carson's keys, of course, with the shiny keys that we definitely changed. I do want to get into some of the pieces as to how the Mets can win this game based on some of the data and based on some of the situations here. So let's get into this one for Game 3. Now, the first one, I think that it's pretty self-explanatory where Walker Buehler has struggled this year. It definitely has come from right from the beginning, that being out of the gate. Hitters have really teed off on him the first time through the order. And you know how like pitchers usually struggle like the third time through the order? Even though Buehler has not been great later in games, a lot of damage has been done against him early on in the game. Hitters are slashing 336, 403, 570 against Buehler the first time through the order for a earned run average of 6.21, which is just insane. And that pretty much explains why he's only pitched like 70 innings since May. And of course, you're going to get a lot of these chances with over 50%, 52% of Buehler's pitches that land in the strike zone. The Mets will have tons of opportunities to attack Buehler, who's really struggled to miss bats all season. Like I said, even with the curveball conversation, similar to Aaron Nola, the approach is well simplified here. You see ball, crush ball, and lift ball. All right. Now, as for crushing the ball, we hinted this around throughout this stream so far. Even though the Mets are facing a very vulnerable Walker Buehler from this year, they still need a catalyst. This game, it has to be Pete Alonso. As said before, even though Buehler has prevented the long ball at a solid rate, his inability to miss bats this season has forced him to pitch from the stretch a lot. The key is to use Alonso as the traditional cleanup hitter from the good old days. Hitters are slashing 284, 382, 459, and have a 311 batting average on balls in play against Buehler with runners in scoring position. Has Pete Alonso struggled in this situation this year with runners in scoring position? Yes. But just know, Pete Alonso has quite the career against Walker Buehler that includes 4 homers and 8 runs batted in. If you want to attack Buehler early on and knock him out of the game, Pete Alonso is going to have to be the one to deliver that knockout punch, which is why I'm calling this one a big man's feast, because we have seen him do very well against a guy like Walker Buehler in the past, even when he was one of the premium young upcoming pitchers. And I know that says Palonzo on the graphic, but you know what? It happens. Now, as for the keys from the mound with Severino, I'm going to call this one the running man. Against a Dodgers team that pretty much does not chase much, Severino's contact management skills are going to be put to the test tonight, especially against guys like Ohtani and Freeman, even Muncy, who struggled a lot. Muncy didn't struggle, but Ohtani and Freeman, who struggled a lot against Manaya's high zone run on his sinker. How could Severino get that same effect from the right side? Not really the same effect, but the best way to do it is to utilize his sinker, which does have over 15 inches of glove side run from its high release height. And the key to using the top of the zone against these caliber of hitters is what we've been saying pretty much all along before this series started. give them nothing to pull. The only problem is Severino's sinker is not really a swing and miss pitch like Manaea. It's more of a for contact management. The Dodgers, on the other hand, have hit the ball on the ground at a 52.8% rate versus right-handed pitchers throwing sinkers this season. The key is to get the ball to the left side of the infield. Who's on the left side of the infield? Oh, yeah, that Francisco Lindor guy who got snubbed of a Gold Glove nomination just yesterday. It's basically the same way Severino has been pitching all year since he entered Queens, not chasing strikeouts, but chasing execution and volume. Getting outs, getting deep into the game, and especially with the bullpen situation now, and with them going with somebody like Kodai Senga, who probably won't be able to go distance, they're going to need a lot of volume from their starters. When it comes to all of these keys to the game, I should probably just pop them up. Maybe I'll just change the typo because it's driving me crazy. But when it goes to you, Frank, I think it's pretty self-explanatory that the pitching matchup is definitely going to establish a title for this game, for what the offenses are going to be able to do. But as for the Mets offense, this is their chance to really put the hammer down as a Game 3 from 2015. I remember they scored like 15 runs in that game. So, hopefully they can possibly do something that repeats that to keep Sevy from pitching very tense on the mound in a close game. So what do you think about some of these keys? Anything else you'd like to add in regarding going into this game?
Yeah, I think another key is the fact that, you are home this time. So the Dodgers get the
Yeah.
first swing at it. So when this game kicks off at 8:08 p.m., Shohei Ohtani steps into the box, very first batter of the game. And then, right after him, you obviously have Mookie Betts, you have Freddie Freeman, anybody gets on, Max Muncy, Teoscar, and so forth. So as a pitcher, if you could somehow get a zero in the first inning, I feel like that will really make a big difference,
Yeah.
because even if the Dodgers get, let's say, one run, like let's say Mookie hits it out, going down 1-0, Dodgers have momentum. Walker Buehler is able to kind of make his start with a little bit more confidence. But if you're able to kind of shut down that top half early, then you have the first crack to get on the board, get the momentum, get the crowd with you, and then just kind of use that as a little boost to kind of push you all the way through. So I think that trying to, for Severino, be very careful to not put the Mets in a hole early, let their offense get a chance, because like we said, this is a really good opportunity for this offense with Buehler struggles that I really want to see Severino kind of set the tone, and then the offense could kind of take care of the rest. I love your point about trying to pitch for the ground balls. Again, my key in every game is don't walk batters, especially this team. So if you keep the ball on the ground, use Lindor, use Iglesias up the middle, the corners, it is what it is. But you're in a pitcher's ballpark in Citi Field, so you have all that to your advantage. And again, if you keep the ball on the ground, it allows you to keep that pitch count low, work deep into the games, which is also the main key for me. Like I said earlier, if you work deep into this game, it helps you game 4, game 5. So if you're keeping it on the ground, you're not walking batters, that's going to help you out a lot. And listen, if they could get another big swing from Pete, it'd be huge. I mean, it could be the difference maker for sure, because we know Lindor Vientos have been great. So if they could get one more big bat to get a big swing, it gives them a much better chance to just overall win the ball game. So whether that is Alonso, they gave Martinez a start, maybe he gives you a big one. And then obviously if somehow Alvarez could be the one. So one of, like I always say, like one of the three, like if one of the three give you a big swing, that could really carry you. Or if Nimmo, again, my expectations are definitely lowered with the amount of pain he's playing through. So if you get something from Nimmo, that's great. But everyone else, it's like, Iglesias, Taylor, we don't expect too much as far as like power. But for Marte, I'm just kind of curious, like, how does he kind of follow up the last game he had? Because what I really loved about Marte's game is, like, sure, he got a few hits, that's great, but I love the way he utilized the whole field. Like, he went to left field, he went up the middle. So how is that approach going to be? Because we had talked so much about him always going to right field in the postseason so far. Those ground balls he was hitting to the right side for base hits. How is he going to approach today's game as far as, like, is he going to try to pull the ball maybe now he's in Citi Field, try to go over the Great Wall of Flushing? I kind of wonder how that element plays into it too. So those are my keys. It's a lot of like the same stuff, just because that's kind of what's always the key with this Dodgers team, especially like we talk about the walks, particularly the bottom half of the order, because with Severino and the occasional long balls that he could run into, if Otani's going to get a big swing, Betts or Freeman are going to get a big swing, it needs to be with the least amount of runners on base as possible, so the least amount of damage is done as possible. You know what I mean? Like Kike's had big swings, Tommy Edmonds had a good series. Kevin Lux has talent, but those guys are not going to crush you like the way these other guys can. And you just have to try to make the most out of those at bats.
Yeah, when we talk about the bottom part of this order, please just can we silence Tommy Edman? Like, Jesus Christ, he's actually been a pain in the ass this entire series. And there always is one. But if you do silence him, then it definitely takes the pressure off when, going back to the top of the order regarding guys like Otani, even though Otani, no matter what, at any point can absolutely destroy the baseball. Same goes for Freeman and Betts and Muncy and Teoscar Hernandez. But when it comes to that caliber, the top of the lineup, I mean, that's some of the best players in all of baseball. Freeman, obviously, on the pace of the Hall of Fame career. Mookie Betts as well. And then, of course, Shohei Otani, which is he's 3 batters away. He's always 3 batters away somehow. And we always have a tracking device shoved up his ass for some reason. We already know where he is. M. Easy saying we could use a power surge from Alonso, JD, or Francisco. Yes, that would be great. Alvarez is still not homered in the postseason yet. I don't know. When was the last time Alonso homered? Was it like game 3 or something? Game 2?
Yeah, he had the one against the Phillies. I think it was the Nola game. Yeah, the opposite field.
Yeah,
so it was game 3.
Yeah. So I definitely do. And again, Alonso, like we said, has quite a career against Walker Buehler, who I think both of them were rookies in 2019, right? I think
that sounds right.
Right. Again, and like we've said, this is a different pace against the Dodgers in the full series because we're not facing Kershaw, who we 100% just seem like we can't hit no matter how old the guy is, no matter how bad he is in the postseason in his career, can't hit Kershaw. Yamamoto is the only guy we have concerns about. Let's just say that because we know that if he gets on a roll, there's going to be some things, but he's had his blowups as well. So nobody in this Dodger rotation right now is Kershaw, who's been an absolute buzzsaw against us since he came into the league at age 19.
And nobody's Tyler Glass now either.
No one's Tyler Glass now either, who also carved us up and pretty much sent us to sleep after Alvarez got hurt into the May doldrums that we had. But then the Dodgers kind of brought us back into it after that whole sweep in Citi Field. So the Dodgers have a lot of symbiotic reasons to this season. Hopefully we can get the last laugh in that regard. But, we've been red hot ever since the Jorge Lopez incident on May 31st or something like that. Carlos Ortiz coming in, another great viewer as well. What's going on? Christopher T coming in saying big man feast. Absolutely. Easy also said earlier saying I would have put Nimmo at DH and started Bader in center field and Taylor in left field. That foot of Nimmo scares me defensively. I think that like when it comes to Nimmo on his foot, like I talked about possibly giving him rest in this game because of Winker's advantage against Walker Buehler, and then also JD Martinez. They want to get him in the lineup, and then you kind of save Nimmo for some of those like high leverage situations. We already know that like it has been reported he is going to get the PRP ejection. He's going to be in a walking boot after the season ends, right afterwards. So I mean, we already know that it's gonna come. We'll see how they work with it. The only way that I'd put Bader in this game is if you're facing a lefty, and Bader hasn't really even been good against lefties recently. So it's like
this whole team is right-handed, so there's no one you would
there's
bring
no
him in
reason.
For. No,
there really is no reason I'd say to put him in there unless Nimmo is really, really hurt.
I mean, you could defensive replacement for him at the end, which they did last game. They did put Bader and move Taylor over. You can do that for that, which again, I still don't like. I know why you do that, but I still understand why if you're going to bring Bader in and leave Taylor, why don't you just move Marte to left? Like I just don't understand why Marte is
He
not
can't play
allowed to
left
move.
field for some reason.
Yeah, like he's not
He
allowed to
just
move
can't.
from right field.
Even though
It's
like the
weird.
best parts of his career have been in left field,
Yeah,
but
he's just not allowed.
his best defensive parts of his has been in left field. And they don't, for some reason, they don't want to move him there. But it's okay to put a 35-year-old Starling Marte and consider him in spring training to put him in center field. That makes sense. But when it comes to Nimmo, it seems like he feels like he's fine right now.
It's one of those things where it's
If it
like
gets more extreme, we'll find.
We
We'll
saw
see.
that nice catch he made earlier in the series, like that jumping grab, and then he had pain afterwards. Like that's kind of how the foot thing works. So it's like if a ball is hit and Nimmo needs to like get on his horse and get it, he could do it, but it's gonna hurt. So it's kind of
Yeah.
one of those things where like he hasn't lost a step, but the steps hurt of the ones that he has to do.
Yeah, I think it's all really has to do with just the overall like resistance and pressure that he has on that foot, which is his left foot. I thought that this injury came from that collision at the end of Game 2 against the Phillies, but apparently this has been going on since Game 3.
Yeah,
I don't know when it happened or whatever.
Yeah,
but the only
with,
way that you can
with
see
the plantar
is
fasciitis,
Game 2.
it's not a contact injury. It's not something that you would
No,
like hit into
okay,
someone. And it's like, oh no, I have plantar fasciitis. Like it's kind of one of those things. Like it's kind of random in a sense, where it's like
mm,
as much running as he does. I think if anything that impacted him more is the doubleheader with Atlanta and just the kind of schedule
yeah,
that he's
maybe,
had and the effort that he has, like always sprint, like jogging to first base, always running everything out,
yeah,
always going, like even if you're up 7 and this he's at second base and a ball is hitting the gap, he's not jogging to home plate, he's sprinting to home plate. So I think just
yeah,
that
of course.
overall wear and tear on your body is much more likely of what could cause that kind of injury.
Yeah, I do wonder if a ball does get into the gap, if we see him running as hard to second base, because maybe that might affect it. Because again, you have
And
like
that's the
Mookie
thing.
out
That's the
there
thing
who
with
can
somebody like Nimmo. He
freaking
doesn't have another gear. Like it's 100. Like
no,
there is no 75% Brandon Nimmo, and I love that about him. So
yeah,
he's going to give it his best effort, and I give him props for it. But I don't
mm,
think it's at the point yet where it's hurting the team. Like we say, if it gets to that point, that's where you have to consider your other options, because it's like we said with
yeah,
Senga. It's like if you're actually doing more hurt than help, then you got to go.
yeah. We'll see what happens. In regards to Nimmo, I think that like right now, if he says he's okay to play. We all know what's going to happen in the off season when it's all said and done. But it seems like he does want to play. It seems like he's able to do so. He hasn't been great, but again, he's one of your key players there. He's going to be here for a while, no matter what. So you do hope to have him in the lineup, and if he's available to do it, he's in there. Now, as for some other things that I do want to say, as for what was the other thing? Jose Quintana has been named for a Game 4 starter. Luis Severino, the only finalist for the Gold Glove Award, which we could talk a little bit about for about 5 minutes if there is a rant that you would like to put in here, Frank. I'm letting you give it to you, but when it comes to Lindor, it kind of Lindor is the type of guy that it seems like it just should be the perennial situation. Like kind of how no matter what he does, Nolan Arenado's in the third base conversation. That's how I feel about Lindor's defense. I think it should be like that. I don't care personally. I care about winning a World Series. I don't give a shit. But when it comes to somebody like Francisco Lindor, who I'd say when it comes to range, when it comes to overall impact on the defensive part of the diamond, there is possibly no defender better than him. Like anyone, like at all. We know that the when range metrics have come in, he has the highest outs above average among every player, every single position since it came out. And then of course, just the overall impact and the way that he plays the game of shortstop, it's so fluid that way that it impacts this team in so many different ways. I know the Gold Glove doesn't really count for being the assistant pitching coach sometimes, but again, everything that he does on the field is a huge impact for this team. And it's definitely the leadership that we've been missing for a while since number 5 left in 2018 and hasn't been out there on the field for a long time in full gear. But when it comes to Lindor, what are your thoughts on that? Is it the same that it usually is? Because like when it comes to Ezekiel Tovar, Mason Wynn, who's the other guy?
Dansby Swanson.
Dansby Swanson, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
which are all good defenders.
Yeah, like exactly. Like they're all good defenders in their own right. Definitely Swanson and Tovar. We've definitely seen them firsthand win a little bit to a lesser extent. But I think with Francisco, this has been going on all year. I mean, it started back in the All-Star game. He got snubbed from that, obviously, and then he gets snubbed from the Gold Glove. And as far as the MVP, like I understand Ohtani winning it for the statistics, but I think when you say the word most valuable player, no one has more value than Francisco Lindor for a particular team, especially in this matchup. So I think you want to say best statistical season award, best stats award. Ohtani 10
That's
times
Hank
out of
Aaron.
10. Yeah, is it Hank Aaron award? Like I don't deny Ohtani in that regard. Oh, it's a historic 50-50 season. I get it. He has the ability, he has the talent to pitch, but he wasn't healthy enough to do it. So I understand how great he is as a player. But like Lindor, like we've said, as far as moments, as far as the biggest spots, you can go, they've had a bunch lately. You can go Toronto, you want Atlanta, you want Philadelphia series. All the times during the regular season, he got big hits late in games. All the time, mound visits he had to do, defensive plays, running the bases. Like he's literally done everything the whole time. And you could really just see the difference. He's just there when it matters the most. So he's going to get snubbed out of that technically as far as like, I don't think he's going to get enough votes that he deserves. So it's been going on all year. And it's been going on his whole Mets career because there have been other times where he's deserved All-Star nods. He's deserved Gold Glove finalists, maybe the award in general. This has been going his whole Mets career. He's not had any hardware to really take home. Hopefully he gets Silver Slugger this year. I think he'll get it at the shortstop position, but that, Silver Slugger is not the same as some of these other awards. But I think overall, if the Mets could go I think the only way he'll ever get the true respect he deserves on the national attention as far as accolades, the only way he'll get it is if the Mets win it all and he gets World Series MVP. Then maybe some other people will finally wake up and give him the recognition he deserves. Because at this point, it's just been going on every year that, like, as much as I want to give my big vintage rant, it's like I see this over and over. Like, unfortunately, I'm not surprised. And that's sad, but that's just what's happened. It's a results-based thing, and the results have been every single time they don't give him love. So that's just how it's been.
Yeah, in regards to, like, when you look at those 3 finalists in the National League, the top 3 in DRS, defensive run saved, is Mason Wynn, Ezekiel Tovar, and Dansby Swanson. Right under that is Francisco Lindor. But when it comes to, the shortstop position, the best way to look at it is range, personally. When you're talking about up the middle, on the backhand, that's definitely the sharpest angle that any shortstop can go from. And when I look at it, of the guys that I'd probably nominate, I would put Dansby Swanson in there. I would put Francisco Lindor in there. The other guy that I would put in, because he has a ridiculous arm, is Elly De La Cruz. That's another guy that I would put there in the Gold Glove conversation, but he has a -2 DRS in order of the run value. But when you're talking about full-on range, Elly De La Cruz is one of the best defenders as well at the shortstop position. He's just so large. I mean, he really is so large that he can cover so much ground. Lindor isn't, which makes it a lot more impressive, of course. I think that we also got a full hand of, Lindor's arm as well this year, because we know that he had that, the bone chips removed from his elbow. So now he's able to throw a lot hard. I think he's throwing like 3 miles an hour harder than he was last year. So, I mean, when it comes to it, Lindor definitely deserves the recognition for what he has done for this team. But to be honest, I'm personally okay with these awards being snubbed from some of our players to keep everyone humble, of course, because we all know what happened with Jeff McNeil. But regarding, that
was not voted though. That one is like you automatically get based off statistics.
I'm just screwing with him. Okay, but when it comes to the whole situation with these awards, I'd rather just have a good team in front of me that wins baseball games.
How
Like
was
that's it.
Soto Gold Glove finalist? If anything, if I want to rant about anything, it would be that. Like, come on, he's been a disaster in right field. I don't know how he got finalist for that. I know his arm is good, but come on, like that's just crazy.
How is Salvio always up for it? Things we'll never know.
Yeah.
Things we'll never know. They see a highlight play and they write it down. Like that's it. I mean, we saw a lot of highlight plays
Tovar
from,
gets a lot of highlight reels. He did against us. I mean, that he had a
yeah.
clinic. So
He's
goes
quite
a
the
long way.
athlete.
Yeah.
He is quite the athlete. I will say, we also saw Juan Lagares pretty much win a Gold Glove strictly off of the highlight reel. I mean,
he was great. He was great,
and he was a great defender. He still was, but he wasn't the best. He wasn't the best in center field that year. He wasn't the best in center field. If you're talking about it statistically or just overall range or overall value, it definitely wasn't Juan Lagares. Still a great defender. Probably one of the best defensive outfielders we've ever had.
Yeah.
But when it comes to just the overall value for looking at it from statistics or overall impact, it definitely was not Juan Lagares, especially on a Mets team that was so fucking awful that year. What was it, 2014, 2013?
Yeah, 2014.
That team was bad. I mean, that team was really, really bad.
Yep.
But again, when it comes to the MVP award, one thing I will say, if Ohtani goes silent in this game, even though the MLB is most likely trying to rig it as to where he walks off like a few of these games, and just, give him all these juice balls or whatever. If Lindor outperforms Ohtani doesn't show up, Mets win this series, it's going to start a conversation.
Listen,
it's going to say
Lindor got intentionally walked before Ohtani did.
He got intentionally walked before Ohtani. The Mets have not been wusses against Ohtani yet. They haven't. Hopefully that continues. And they're able to place the pitch properly, because we all know his bat can cover so much of the plate. And listen, Ohtani can have MVP all he wants. I want my World Series ring. That's what I want. And we all know that Ohtani's going to win it year in and year out. And I personally don't care about this discussion, to be honest. Like, I'm not. I think that when I say MVP in regards to Lindor, I talk about what he has done for the team. I don't really care what people think about my players. I don't care what they think about my team. I personally want them to hate us, to be honest. It gives us a little bit more of an edge and a little bit more of motivation to keep killing and don't get comfortable. But when it comes to this whole thing, which is it's a regular season award, it's gonna start a conversation, because we always talk about this before. I always talk about it, of course. It's not how you start, it is how you finish. And if the Mets end up finishing off the Dodgers after spending all that money on a Shohei Ohtani, he doesn't hit well, and that doesn't happen, a conversation's gonna be made as to which one of those players are just shiny stars and which one of those players got the dog in them. Let's just say that. But that's it. That's all I can really say. Let's just say that. Ken coming in here saying hi to Frank. I think
hello.
That's you. Yeah. But as for any other details in here, I don't know if there's anything else that we didn't go over. It looks like Drew Gilbert was killing it in Arizona Fall League yesterday.
Awesome. That's great.
Which means that he's going to be a bust at the major league level, because all the Mets prospects that are good in the Arizona Fall League play like shit. Call on Brett Beatty. But also, speaking of other things during the offseason, Shintaro Fujinami is going to pitch in Winter League. I don't know if the Mets are looking at that. Probably not. When it comes to some other guy, there was an international prospect they did sign who's a pitcher today. I did see that. I might report that on tomorrow's. But other things that we can talk about going into this game, I just want to say, you're in front of your home crowd, right? You are in front of your home crowd now. Everyone's behind you. You're not in LA anymore, and you're here for 3 games. I'm hoping when it comes to what the Mets do, they treat this like, it's in the regular season. It's a 3-game series at their ballpark, and they do what they've done all year. That being win out of two out of three. I think that's the best case scenario. Going back into LA down in the series, probably not the best thing to do. If you're up, all I can say is if you're up 3-1 or 3-2, you're in a good spot. But again, we got to worry about game 3 first. One game at a time. Like we've said, this is a really good Dodgers team. It took a while to get that first win in game 2. So we'll see what happens. Any other message that you got for this team, Frank? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I just like we said, I feel like there are times, especially there was that one game they had where I feel it was one of the Phillies games where it's like it was the last one where you just feel like they had such a great chance against like Suarez who was struggling. So remember we talked about like Suarez have been struggling recently, and they had a million opportunities, and you feel like they got too confident and maybe like pressed or just didn't take it too serious and squandered a million opportunities. Don't do that because that was really annoying and frustrating. So do not do that to me again. Either be bad or be good. Don't do both. That's not a thing. So just like figure out what you are and do it. Hopefully it's the good side.
Yeah. It looks like Kodai Senga has 40 eye black. You know how like they
awesome.
support the pitcher for
like
Sevi.
I like how they do that.
I don't know if Minaya has it or whatever.
Oh, he definitely has it. Manaya's like the king of that. He definitely has the 40.
Minaya is a character, definitely. Mets fans apparently did boo Shohei Ohtani. So
fine.
We can see New York fans being the New York fans that they are. Ricardo saying, what's up? What's going on, Ricardo? Easy saying, leave Brett Beatty alone. Absolutely not. Tell him to not get drafted by the Mets, and then I will leave him alone. But other than that, I think we're gonna wrap this thing up here. We did what's it called? We did go over a little bit, just because again, there's a lot of things that happened over the off day that we just wanted to get over. Lots of moving parts, of course, going with this team into the postseason, and it's going to continue. We will be live for the post game, which will be our podcast. Frank is not going to be here. As for Andrew, he is still sick. He's still dealing with some of that. He will be back eventually, but he's just not feeling the best right now. He's definitely feeling better, but he has to get his voice back. So you definitely need a voice to do a podcast. So of course, stay tuned. We are going to be having for today's post game. And for tomorrow's post game, since Frank is going to be out, I will be having 2 different special guests on here. So stay tuned for that. And then, of course, make sure to hit the subscribe button if you have not already. I will deal out the final votes for this poll here. For who will win Game 3, 58% of you are saying the Mets. 28% of you are staying the Dodgers. 14% of you are pleading the 5th. You don't want to jinx anything whatsoever. But other than that, finishing it off here, make sure to subscribe, like button, follow us on Twitter, TikTok, all of us individually, including Andrew, like we said, who is not here. And we will be seeing you guys after the game. For our post-game coverage, of course, throughout all postseason long, pre-games and post-games before every single game. It has been, quite the content grind, but we're here for it. We're here through and through with our team, win or loss, no matter what happens. Hopefully we have news that is good to report at the end here. So thank you guys so much for watching. For those of you who tuned in live, for those of you who are in here for a little bit, for those of you watching on Twitter, for those of you watching on YouTube, for those of you watching on Frank's channel, which I think this is on as well. Of course, thank you for tuning in, and we will see you guys for the post game after tonight's game. Of course, last thing, let's go Mets, and enjoy the game, and we'll see you guys later tonight.